This is OptixEQ, and we're going to look at the Barber Fritchie, which is a stakes race, sprint for fillies and mares going 7 furlongs at Laurel. It's their big stakes day tomorrow, and they get some really nice races, and this is one of them. What I've done here is we put up the 3 horses that'll take most of the action, the 3 favorites, High Ridge Road, By the Moon, and Wonder Gal. And what I want to kind of show is that, one of the most important handicapping factors is suitability, right? So is the horse suited to the surface and distance? And, in the case of these 3 horses, we're thinking that the 3 By the Moon is the most suited for 7 furlongs and for sprinting. So let's first kind of just take a look at the last race that High Ridge Road and By the Moon came out of. It was a stakes race, a non-graded stakes race at Laurel, this track. It was on the December the 31st. And it was a 1-turn mile. And both of them ran very well, earning Optix Fig of 102 and 101 respectively. Now, High Ridge Road got the best of By the Moon that day, and we're hoping that that kind of shifts the odds, because in that race, By the Moon was 4-5, while High Ridge Road was 2-1. So we're hoping that maybe things get more balanced out there. And both of those horses ran really well. You could see they were wide. They were stalking a slow pace, and then they both kind of really took off from the rest of the field and separated themselves late, running big late pace numbers here. And the thing to note there is that By the Moon looked like she was going to get just trounced by High Ridge Road at some point, and she kind of dug back in and showed some grit. She showed the class that she has. She's a grade 1 placed and grade 2 winner, so she's got a lot of class. And again, we're just hoping maybe the price changes, because let's take a little bit closer look at the 1 High Ridge Road and tell you what we mean. She looks more like a router and a 1-turn miler, especially. She started off a career sprinting. She did okay, but you could see once they got her going 1-turn miles, she's essentially unbeaten when she does that. I mean, she's just the only loss was in the Go for Lawn. But she's run it 5 times and 4 wins. So, that's what she wants to do. That's really her forte. Now, what the concern is, she's kind of a presser closer type, and she's going to be on the rails. And the first time she's going to be on the rail too. And concern is if, things get, she gets shuffled back inside, that might be a concern. So I think, the new post, the new distance, make her a little bit more vulnerable, and we prefer By the Moon in those scenarios, and we're going to show you why. She's more of a 7 furlong specialist. Let's just filter her on 7 furlongs. You could see, again, she's grade 1 placed at 7 furlongs. She's won a grade 3. She's just classy, and it's just going to be a matter of the price. We'll show you the plot. We project her to sit a pretty good trip. So she looks like the horse to beat. The 8 is the other horse. And let's just take a look at, let's just clear the filters here. Let's look at Wonder Gal. She's really more of a router too. Let's just filter on 7 furlongs. I mean, she's run against, some of the best too, but she hasn't been effective or placed in those races as number 3 By the Moon. So this is not really her best distance. So just from a pure suitability, a distance, dirt, it looks like 3 has a big edge on these horses. So these other two fillies, I mean. So let's take a look at the plot. And if we map the first call, remember this is kind of the front to the back. It looks like the 2 is the speed of the race, but we'll look at her form a little bit more closely. She kind of just looks like she's going to fall off that big circle there, and she doesn't really have any kind of pace advantage. She would be higher in this quadrant 1. So it looks like the 3 and the 1 are stalkers, and the 8 and the 7 are horses that would stalk her. I think the 3 will be the one that'll be closer up, and you can see she's higher on the y-axis. So she's going to be right off of the 2. She'd be sitting right off the 2. And then I think, the 7 looks kind of interesting, because, she can sit just off of those 2, especially if the 1 kind of gets shuffled back, and, the 7 with the outside draw, may be able to position herself better. And then some of the closers would be the 6 and the 4. I think in a scenario like this, we're probably looking more underneath than anything with those. So let's look at the form of some of these others. If if we have a chance, if we can key to 3 and have a chance to maybe beat the 1 and or 8 in the exotics, who would it be? Let's start with the 2. We talked about that one a little bit, and you're going to see that she's just a little bit too slow, a little too cheap. I mean, even her last race, she was lone speed. She does have speed though, and she has good 2 furlong speed, so she'll be out there, on the front end, and she'll take it as long as she can. You can see she had a no line in her last. That means she was drifting. She wasn't holding a line, and she was drifting late against 25,000 optional $25,000 horses. She faces a much tougher bunch. She goes an extra furlong. We don't expect her to stick around. We've talked about the 1 and 3. Let's talk about the 4 a little bit. She's kind of a little bit all over the map in terms of what she's been doing. She's sprinted on the dirt. Runs synthetic. She's run really long marathon distances on the turf. It just seemed not to be able to find what her niche is. But if you kind of just look at her sprint races, and I'm going to just, both on synthetic and the A means synthetic, and and then obviously the D is the dirt. She's pretty effective, when she's sprinting. I think that's what she wants to do the most. She's a little bit light on numbers. It's going to take probably mid to upper 90s to win this race, and she's kind of below that. But, hey, she can maybe get up for a piece. Maybe the exact, and maybe the exotic if, somebody doesn't show up. So she's not a horse that, we just would toss willy-nilly. But she's going to be a little pressed to try to win this race. But, again, maybe she's usable underneath in some areas. So let's clear her out, and let's look at the number 5. She's another one that just kind of looks too slow on surface. Again, you look at her recent numbers. She's just kind of breaking the mid 80s, and we talked it's going to take more mid 90s to do the job. The number 6 is interesting. She comes off of a 64-day layoff. She ran really well, winning the stakes, a non-grade stakes race at Aqueduct with a close. That was a solid race. She gets Ortiz to ship in to Ryder, Irad. And, she's one that the only thing that looks like a little bit against her is the pace flow, but she'll be rolling on late. And, if for some reason it really gets heat up there, we don't expect it, to do that. But if it really does, she can come rolling. She's definitely warranted underneath. She's fast enough to win this race even. You can see some of the mid-90 races. But probably more apt for underneath in a race like this. And then the number 7, we talked a little bit bad on the plot. She could kind of just fall into the right trip. She's also was in the Interborough, and she actually was 5-2 in that race. It was off a very long layoff. And she looked great on the track. You see the Paddock Plus, that's what that means. And she just made a move if you kind of hover over it. She made a subtle, short move on the turn. Probably needed the race, needed some fitness. She's going to have to improve, but she is fast enough in the past to win this thing. She has run fast enough, and she is more of a sprinter type. That's kind of her forte. So, she kind of gets ignored in the price. You could just kind of, like I said, sit that right trip, maybe get fall into like a second or third, behind the 3 in a race like this. So, that's basically our evaluation of the contenders again. If we go back to the plot, it looks like number 3, By the Moon, if not kind of overplayed, looks like the key horse in here. And some of the other horses that look viable at prices would be, we mentioned the 4, 6, and the 7. And the 1 and 8 could be a little bit vulnerable in this scenario. And we think the 2 and the 5 look, pretty much like tosses. So that's our evaluation using Optix plot and Optix notes. And good luck in the Barbara Fritchie at Laurel.